Colleagues, you care about your kids' writing. That's why when you get back to all those published pieces and those on demands, your heart is filled with the warmth at all those thoughtful ideas and those effective arguments and the beautiful voice kids exhibit in their writing. But tell me if this is you. Once you get past all the beauty and the importance of the kids' writing, you notice a word or two misspelled here and there. And in fact, when you look more closely, it's more than just a few words misspelled. And when you look across kids' text, you notice a lot of misspelled words. Spelling is a big deal. Researchers Steve Graham and Tanya Santangelo argue that if more than 3 words are misspelled per 100 words written, then students are scored lower on their writing. Misspellings and spelling uncertainty, they slow writers down because their working memory is devoted to how do I spell this word as opposed to being devoted to writing down ideas. This affects not only the drafting stage of the writing process, but also the rehearsal and the revision stages. Students devoting all of their brain power trying to figure out how words are spelled also causes students to only spell the words that they know how to spell, which makes the word choices students use look less than robust. Misspellings and spelling uncertainty also create a downward spiral with regard to kids' attitude. I can't spell, so I don't like writing. Their self-concept, I can't spell, so I'm not a writer. Their motivation, I can't spell, so why write? And their ease in writing. Spelling and therefore writing is too hard. These psychological factors create a writer who does not write, and you can't get better at spelling if you don't spell. It gets worse. Researcher Joy Lynn argues that spelling does not come naturally to the human species like speech does. And on top of that, English spelling, well, it does have many patterns, has a lot of words that don't fit the pattern. This means that students have to know spelling patterns and they have to simply remember a lot of words that don't fit a pattern. Learning to spell is not a natural or a passive process. In other words, spelling isn't just caught, but it is to be taught. How do we do that? By systematically and formally teaching phonological, orthographic, and morphological knowledge to students. More on those specific words and what they mean in a bit. Another way to say this is that we must, 1, teach students how to spell specific words. 2, teach students the skills, rules, and strategies to spell unknown words. And 3, teach students how to transfer their knowledge of English spelling through systematic activities. I'll tell you what those are in a moment. Joy Lynn has some specific suggestions for helping 3rd through 5th graders in their spelling. First, a child may need help with phonics. If that's true, start there. A lot of 3rd grade spelling will focus on students' phonological knowledge, that is, hear the word, sound it out, then write it with feedback from the teacher. In 4th and 5th grades, generally, you'll focus more on orthographic strategies, that is, see the word, write it from memory, then get feedback from the teacher. It's in the upper grades that you'll also focus on morphological strategies, that is, teaching prefixes and suffixes and some Greek and Latin roots where necessary, and also how those affixes change the spelling in those words. Jean Wanzek and her colleagues have additional recommendations for students with learning disabilities. One strategy they recommend is to invite students to spell a word by hand to the best of their ability, while afterward, a teacher will spell the word correctly as immediate feedback. This step is important because invented spellings without immediate feedback can have a detrimental effect on spelling. Then, after the teacher has written the word, the correct word down, the student is channeled to copy the word and then cover it up and write the word again and compare the results. Another similar and effective strategy for students with learning disabilities has been found to be say the word, check the word, trace the word, and say the word again, cover the word, and then write the word by hand from memory. Both of these methods practice the powerful cognitive science learning strategy of retrieval practice, low stakes self-quizzing. The way you remember something is you try to remember it. Additionally, it's suggested that students with learning disabilities should have spelling lists no longer than about 3 words. They should also have multiple opportunities to practice spelling the words using retrieval practice and immediate feedback. One question is how do you learn how to spell words if they don't fit a particular phonological, orthographic, or morphological pattern? Well, The answer is you just have to remember those words. Now, fortunately, we have a few cognitive science learning strategies that can help us out with learning English words that don't fit any patterns. And that is to use retrieval practice, spaced practice, and interleaving. Retrieval practice is low stakes self-quizzing. Space practice is retrieval practice across time. And interleaving is making sure you're studying more than one thing in your set of topics. So maybe several words in a word bank that you're wanting to spell. Let me tell you a story to kind of exemplify what this could be. So once I was in a school in, I think it was Pennsylvania, and a third grade student said to me, how do I spell the word people? And I had the time and I had the desire at that moment. So I sat down next to him and I said, you know what, let's play a game. I want you to spot me each letter that you think is in the word people. And if you're right, I will tell you yes, and you'll write that letter down. And if you're not, I'll help you out. So we did that. And he said to me, he spotted me the first letter. He said P. I said, yes. He stopped for a moment and he said E. I said, yes. He wrote those letters down. And then he was thinking for a while and he went, P? And I said, let me pause you for a second. You're probably not going to get this one. So let me spot it for you. It's an O. He wrote it down. And then he goes, P. And I said, yes. And he thinks again for a moment and he says, E-L. And I go, yes, that's one way to say O, the sound O. But in this word, it's L-E. Write that down. He wrote down the word P-E-O-P-L-E. I said, cover up the word with your hand. He did. Said, spell people. He spelled it for me. I went off into that lab site and I conferred with another writer. And immediately when I got done with that conference, I went back to that writer and I said, cover up the word, spell people. He did it again. And before I left that lab site, I said, spell people. The next day I was in the same lab site. First thing when I came into that room, I said, spell people. And we laughed and he did it. And then I said, you know what? You know how to spell the word people now. How is it that you're remembering this word? And he said to me, you know what I do is I put a little beat on the word P-E-O. E-L-E. And that is a way to remember words that maybe don't fit a spelling pattern in English, or maybe it's just a bugaboo word. We all have bugaboo words, those words that constantly vex us and frustrate us when we're trying to spell them. Words like definitely and separate and receive, you know them. But we come up with these mnemonics to help us to remember these words. And some of them you could put a little beat on the word. Some of us have little rhymes that help us remember, or songs. Many of us actually will mispronounce the words in our head, overly pronouncing each letter like Wednesday or February. For me, how I remember to spell receive is to say receive, and that helps me remember the words. Some words in English don't fit a phonological, orthographic, or morphological pattern, and therefore they just simply must be remembered through cognitive science learning strategies, including retrieval practice, space practice, interleaving, and mnemonics. In all the grades and in all the research for all students, spelling is best practiced by spelling, writing the words by hand. When you practice these tips, students will be in a better place with their spelling. And here's what you're going to see. You're going to see improved spelling transfer, improved writing in the long term, improved phonological awareness, improved word reading skills, and improved reading comprehension. So there you have it. Teach spelling to students. It matters.